Let's now turn to an exclusive interview with Democratic Congressman Ami Bera. NDTV spoke to Bera earlier before Sunday's potential assassination on Donald Trump. We asked Bera about the role of Indian Americans in this year's election. Bera also told us about what Indian food he'd like to cook for Kamala Harris. Here's more on that and other things we talked about. Now, in the recent debate, Congressman Bera, with the recent debate with Vice President Harris, Trump said that she is Biden. That's a view held by many voters who see Kamala Harris as just an extension of the Biden administration. There are those who say that for nearly 4 long years, she had a chance to reach out to the middle class, fix higher prices, tackle the economy, manage illegal border crossings. So that didn't happen. They just don't buy this.
So I think we can be proud of what the Biden administration's been able to accomplish, getting us out of the pandemic, rebuilding America's infrastructure, some of the legislation that we've passed. But at the end of the day, the president is the president and the vice president is the vice president. So it really is the Biden administration. Kamala Harris, and I've known her for a long time, as district attorney in San Francisco, as attorney general in California, as a senator from California, she also has her own priorities and agendas. And again, I think she's starting to lay some of that out. So it also is a new generation. It's a new generation of leadership. So I do expect she'll continue some of the Biden administration's policies, but I also think just like any new president, she will have her own agenda as well.
But Congressman Bera, people complain that she should be heard more, doing more media interviews. Many want to hear about her policies unscripted and not just at rallies.
Again, this is a campaign that was just set up, a few weeks ago. So yes, I would imagine over the next 4 to 6 weeks, she'll be doing more interviews. She'll be laying out more policy objectives and so forth. But I think, again, people forget how quickly this campaign was set up.
Okay, let's talk about Gaza. It's somewhat unimaginable to think that we are coming up to a year next month, October 7th, since the horrific hostage-taking by Hamas. 40,000 people have died in the Israel-Gaza war since. You have been closely monitoring it as a senior Democrat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. People still continue to die. How is having Harris in the White House really going to change anything?
I think if you listen to how Vice President Harris has talked about the tragedy on October 7th, but also the tragic loss of innocent civilian life after October 7th, I think she, along with President Biden, very much understand the importance of getting a ceasefire, getting the hostages home. I think she'll articulate that maybe slightly differently than President Biden has, but I think from a policy perspective, we want to get that ceasefire and get the hostages returned. But then we want to, as she said in the debate, create a context where the Jewish people in Israel can live safely, but also a context where the Palestinian people can live freely with dignity and peace as well. That's not going to be easy, but again, I think she will work overtime to get us to that ceasefire.
But how frustrated are you with the whole process? It's been so very, very long.
I mean, I'm frustrated as well, and I'd answer that you need both Hamas to come to the table and Prime Minister Netanyahu. And I'm frustrated, frankly, with Prime Minister Netanyahu. He should accept the ceasefire deal. We should get a ceasefire. We should get the hostages released. And the fact that Saudi Arabia, other Arab countries are still at the table, willing to change relations with Israel, recognize Israel, is remarkable. But it starts with a ceasefire and it starts with starting to discuss what a two-state solution looks like. And Prime Minister Netanyahu is the one standing in the way of that.
Now, Kamala Harris did not meet the Prime Minister of Israel when he visited the U.S. in July. Given that chill, how would she be able to negotiate if she wins, given that she gave Netanyahu this cold shoulder? Not a good place to really be in?
Well, again, that is Vice President Harris standing up to our desire to find a ceasefire and a peaceful resolution to the crisis in Gaza. If she does have the privilege to be president of the United States, I think she will continue to stand up. And again, as a member of Congress, I think we've done a remarkable job putting a potential ceasefire deal up the table. Yeah, I've met with the families of hostages. You know, we need to get those hostages released, but we also need to make sure, the senseless violence, the innocent loss of life comes to an end, and we come up with a longer term solution. And I don't expect Hamas to necessarily be a credible player here, but I do think Prime Minister Netanyahu, for the sake of the Israeli people, needs to understand that it's time for a ceasefire.
Congressman Bera, lots to cover here, so let's look at Ukraine in a bit to end the conflict. And looking at peace talks, Trump's running mate J.D. Vance has talked about a heavily fortified, demilitarized zone at the country's borders. What do you make of that idea?
Well, I think in the debate, Trump was shameful when he was asked directly if he wanted to see Ukraine win this war. We all want to see Ukraine win this war because this was an illegal invasion by Russia of a peaceful country that posed no threat to Russia. So Vladimir Putin chose to invade a peaceful country in Ukraine. We have to do everything we can to get this conflict to an end on terms that are readily acceptable to the people of Ukraine.
Let's talk about a possible government shutdown where parks may be closed and hundreds and thousands of workers may be furloughed. A large number of Republicans are refusing to allow government funding unless the bill includes a requirement that people registering to vote must provide proof of citizenship. How valid an argument is that?
That already is the law. It's illegal for undocumented people to cast votes, and there's no evidence that undocumented people are casting votes. You have to be an American citizen to vote. And again, this is just President Trump doing what he always does, is trying to stir up the water, trying to suppress people from voting. Again, there's no evidence in 2020 that there was an illegal vote, and there's no evidence in 2022. And there's no suggestion that that's going to happen in this election. That's just Donald Trump being Donald Trump.
But Congressman Bera, what's going to happen with the funding? How will that be resolved?
Again, the law is you have to be a citizen to cast that vote. I fully expect the folks that are voting in California, everywhere else, ballots are already going out, are citizens. And I trust our election officials. I trust the folks that run our campaigns.
Congressman Bera, given how the election is so close to call, every single vote matters in swing states. Take Georgia, for example. Georgia is where Joe Biden in 2020 won narrowly by a little over 11,700 votes. The Indian American population has doubled in Georgia over the last 15 years or so. So how much of a role are Indian American voters likely to play in tipping the scale for Harris in swing states?
I think there's a pride amongst the Indian American diaspora because I feel it. My parents immigrated from Gujarat in 1958 and 1959, around the same time where Kamala Harris's mother immigrated from India. So our stories are very similar. And when I see Kamala's story, I see my story, and I think a lot of the diaspora sees that as well. So there's a pride. I think it will drive turnout, and in places like Georgia, where you have a significant Indian American population, Nevada, where you now have a pretty significant Indian American population, Arizona, elsewhere, the Indian American vote could make the difference. And again, I think people will show up, they'll turn out, especially the younger generation. You're seeing, I think about my own daughter who's thinking about leaving her job to go work on Kamala Harris's campaign. She sees herself in Vice President Harris. So I think there's an excitement, but this is going to be a very close presidential election, and every vote does matter.
Now, your party has been through much turmoil in the past few weeks, from feeling down to that euphoric high after Kamala Harris stepped into the race. If we could rewind a bit, in July this year, just about 10 days before Biden stepped aside, you said, quote, "I think the Biden campaign is in bad shape and would be better served by having a new candidate." What exactly was making you nervous at the time for you to have said that?
I think what I was articulating and what I said on television was, yeah, President Biden's been a remarkable president. I'm very proud of everything that he's accomplished, but looking objectively at the data, there are no second place trophies when it comes to elections. There's only a first place trophy. And objectively looking at that data at that moment in time, it did not appear that Joe Biden had a chance to win that election. So the suggestion was we should put our best candidate forward.
What was it like for you watching the former president struggle? Tough, I imagine.
Very, very tough, because I'm a big admirer of President Biden. I think he's been an extremely successful president. But I also think he showed his true character. Excuse me. He showed his true character in making a very difficult decision by saying, for sake of country, for sake of party, for sake of making sure Donald Trump is not our president, I'm going to step aside. And then endorsing Vice President Harris, who I think is very ready to be president of the United States. And I think you saw that in the debate this week.
You've known Vice President Harris for a very long time. She's from California, so are you. Harris has listed idlis with a really good sambar as one of her favorite dishes, given our Indian viewers. More on that Indian side of Harris, if you could tell us a little bit more about something really specific in terms of maybe, I don't know, a Bollywood movie, a song, or a place in India. I'm sure she won't mind. So some kind of fun fact that perhaps we haven't heard before.
Yeah, in terms of a fun fact, when I look at the picture of Kamala Harris as a young child with her sister and her mother, and I'll see if I can, find the picture of me when I was a young child with my mother and my two brothers, I'd see myself in that story. And it's just exciting. I've not had shared Indian food with the vice president. Excuse me. But I just think it's exciting as an Indian American.
If you could, what would you cook for her? Do you cook?
I do cook. I would probably do a white fish and a coconut curry sauce. So it's a Southern dish.
Congressman Ami Bera there joining us here for that exclusive interview on NDTV. That's it for now on US Election Watch. I'm Allister in Washington, D.C.